The strong smell of disinfectant and cleaning wax was the universe of Sophia, 35. She wiped the marble handrail in the luxurious lobby of the building with hypnotic precision, feeling the cool, smooth texture under her fingers, her body swaying gently back and forth. Each movement was a ritual, a way of organizing the sensory chaos of the world. The distant noise of the elevator, the click of people's heels as they hurried by, all mingled in a constant hum. Suddenly, a sharp, contemptuous voice cut through the air. It was Donna Clarice, the building manager, an imposing woman with a haughty nose. "Sophia, are you sick? Are you doing those weird movements again? People are looking. You need to see a doctor, or you'll end up scaring the tenants away with your crazy habits." Sophia stopped, the cloth still in her hand, her eyes fixed on the building manager. She felt the stares of the other residents on her, the whispers that followed Clarice's words, as if the word sick were written on her forehead. A man in a suit, Dr. Mendez, one of the most influential tenants, laughed softly but audibly. "Ah, Clarice, poor thing. That's just her jeitinho. But I agree, it's a little strange." Sophia felt the floor disappear beneath her. Sick? Strange? What did he mean? It was the first time anyone had called her something so cruel openly. The night in her small apartment, attached to the building she cleaned, was Sophia's only refuge. The city lights shone through the window, but she felt immersed in an invisible darkness. With tears in her eyes, she spoke to her only confidant, an old voice recorder, where she recorded her most intimate thoughts. "Today they called me sick, unbalanced. The building manager, Dr. Mendez. My movements are strange to them. My way of being is weird. I just wanted someone to understand. I'm not sick. My brain just works differently. The touch of marble, the smell of soap. It calms me down, organizes me. It's my world. I know I'm different. Since I was a child, I've always been told that. My parent, they tried hard, but the world is cruel. At school, I was the weird girl who talks to herself. At work, the slow cleaner. I try to fit in. I try to hide my stims, as the doctors call my repetitive movements. But it's exhausting. I feel invisible, except when I'm the butt of jokes. I remember the day my grandfather, my dear grandfather Arthur, told me, "Sophia, you see the world through a different lens, and that's a superpower. Don't let anyone diminish you." He was the only one who really understood me. After he was gone, I was left alone with the promise he made me, a promise that no one else knows about. It's like I live in a fish tank, and people knock on the glass and laugh at the way I swim. I just want to be able to breathe, to exist without being called sick for being who I am. The word echoes in my head, consuming me. I just want them to know the truth. Sophia's voice broke, and she turned off the recorder, the silence in the room bearing witness to her silent pain. After the death of her grandfather Arthur, who was her only source of support and understanding, Sophia found herself alone in a world that made no sense. His promise that she would never be abandoned echoed in her mind, but the reality was cruel. She tried to get by, seeking help in ways that turned out to be painful traps. The first light came from a sensationalist TV show that promised to rehabilitate people with autism through a famous motivational coach, Mr. Victor, who had a broad smile and a calculating gaze. "With the right mindset, you can overcome any obstacle," he shouted on television. Sophia, desperate for acceptance and a chance to feel normal, signed up for the program. The coaching consisted of forcing her to suppress her repetitive movements and eye contact, to speak louder and more assertively, all in order to fit in. The cameras recorded every mistake, every sensory overload. Crisis she tried to hide. The result? Sophia wasted away, anxiety consumed her, and she regressed, feeling even more misunderstood and incapable. Mr. Victor, seeing that she was not becoming the success story he wanted for TV, simply discarded her, claiming that her case was too complex for his method. The second hope came from a distant cousin, Claudia, who suddenly became concerned about Sophia. "Sophia, you need a place to live, a job. How about working as a cleaner in my building? It's a good start, a quiet place," Claudia offered in a voice that was too sweet. Sophia, grateful for the apparent kindness, accepted. The building was luxurious, and the job seemed like a lifeline. However, Claudia, who was the building manager, Donna Clarice, only saw Sophia as cheap and obedient labor. someone who wouldn't complain. She exploited Sophia, increasing her tasks but never raising her salary, and worse, using the cleaning lady's quirks to humiliate and demean her in front of the other residents. The promise of a quiet place turned into a hell of judgment and exploitation. The greatest betrayal, however, came from her grandfather Arthur's inheritance. He had promised to take care of her, and the family knew he had assets. However, after his death, Sophia's closest relatives, led by her uncle Marcello, Arthur's brother, disappeared with the documents, with the excuse that she did not have the legal capacity to manage anything. They convinced her that her grandfather had left her almost nothing, just a small amount to support herself as a cleaning lady. Sophia, in her naivety and difficulty in dealing with bureaucracy, believed them. The family's help was, in fact, a veiled theft, a cruel manipulation to exploit her vulnerability. The false hope coming from all sides not only left her without resources, but plunged her into even greater loneliness, where the only thing she had left was hard work in the building, a place that would become the stage for her greatest humiliation. The luxurious lobby of the building was the daily stage of humiliation for Sophia. The building manager, Mrs. Clarice, with her perfectly combed hair and a look of superiority, made a point of monitoring Sophia's every move, finding faults where none existed. "Sophia, are you sweeping the same place again? We don't have all day for your slowness. And stop swaying. That's not how an employee should stand," she would say loudly, so that the residents passing by could hear and judge. Dr. Mendez, the psychiatrist who lived on the top floor and boasted about his insight into human behavior, was even worse. Whenever he saw Sophia, he approached her with a patronizing and false tone, disguised as help. "Sophia, my dear, have you ever thought about seeking treatment? Those movements, that difficulty in interacting, they're symptoms, you know. I can refer you to a colleague. Don't worry, it's for your own good." Behind his smile, Sophia felt the poison, the pathologization of her very existence. To him, she wasn't a person, but a case. The exploitation of Claudia, her cousin and niece of the former building manager, was even more cruel. She had promised Sophia an apartment for her in the building, but in reality it was a tiny room attached to the laundry room, without the minimum conditions for a home. Claudia kept increasing Sophia's tasks, charging her for extra services and always threatening, "If you don't do it, Sophia, I'll fire you and you'll be out on the street. No one will want a weird cleaning lady like you." The fear of losing her only job and the little roof over her head paralyzed Sophia, who felt trapped in a web of exploitation. But the deepest humiliation, the one that made Sophia's blood boil in silent rage, happened at the condominium meetings. Sophia, as a cleaning lady, was forced to serve coffee. Mrs. Clarice made a point of making derogatory comments about her in front of everyone. "Sophia is hardworking, but she's a little limited. We have to be patient with her little ways, right?" she would say, laughing, and the other residents would join her in laughter and looks of contempt. Dr. Mendez, at one of these meetings, had the audacity to suggest openly, "Perhaps we should look for someone more qualified for the position, someone who doesn't make the residents feel uncomfortable." Sophia felt every word like a punch in the stomach. She was the sick one, the limited one, the weird one, the shame that should be hidden. At that moment, as she served coffee and listened to the laughter, a silent and powerful plan began to form in Sophia's mind. Revenge would not come with words, but with the revelation of a truth that no one would dare to contest. That day at the condominium meeting, with the laughter and Dr. Mendez's suggestion, was the spark that lit the fire in Sophia. The humiliation she had swallowed for years, the veiled exploitation, the pathologization of her very existence, all turned into a silent and relentless fury. As she served coffee, her hands trembling, Sophia didn't think about crying. She thought about how she would bring the truth to light. She remembered her grandfather Arthur's words, "Sophia, they may underestimate you, but never underestimate your intelligence. Keep what is yours." And what was hers, she knew, was much more than a cleaning job. In the days that followed, Sophia, with a precision and organization that no one would have imagined, began to take action. In her rare hours off, she didn't go home. She went to a small, discreet document room in the basement of the building. a place that only she, as a cleaning lady, had unrestricted access to. There, amid piles of old papers, she searched. She searched for the documents her grandfather had hidden years before, the same ones her uncle Marcello had said didn't exist. Her repetitive movements, which had previously marked her as strange, now became a tool. Repetition helped her focus, stay alert, and analyze each sheet with almost supernatural concentration. It was on a cold dawn while everyone was asleep that she found it. In a rusty wooden box, hidden behind old plumbing maps, was a leather folder. Inside were old documents with the seal of the notary, wills, deeds, and a purchase agreement dated decades ago, signed by her grandfather Arthur. The truth was there, in small but unquestionable letters. Sophia's hands trembled, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from a power she could hardly believe. The date of acquisition of the building was the same as the date on the will that named her as the sole heir. She wasn't just an heir, she was the rightful owner of the building. Donna Clarice, Claudia, Dr. Mendez, they all lived in and enjoyed a place that was rightfully hers. At the next condominium meeting, the atmosphere was the same as always. Donna Clarice presided arrogantly, Dr. Mendez made pretentious comments, and Claudia cast superior glances at Sophia, who as always served coffee. But Sophia was no longer afraid. Just as Donna Clarice, with a scornful smile, was about to suggest again that the cleaning lady be replaced, Sophia, in a surprisingly calm voice that echoed through the room, silencing everyone, said, "Excuse me, building manager. I have a very important announcement to make to all the residents." Everyone looked at her, confused. She, the sick cleaning lady, speaking. The turnaround was not a miracle, but justice, brought about by a woman who had been underestimated and silenced, but who had kept the most shocking truth of all. The silence in the hall was so thick you could hear everyone's heartbeat. Sophia, the sick cleaning lady, stood in front of the building manager's desk, holding her worn leather briefcase. Mrs. Clarice looked at her with contempt, ready to explode. "Sophia, what do you think you're doing? Go back to your place," she growled. But Sophia, with a calmness that surprised even herself, raised the briefcase. "I have the right to speak, building manager, and all of you have the right to know the truth." She opened the briefcase and, with steady hands, took out the documents. The first victory was the look of astonishment and disbelief on Donna Clarice's face, which turned pale. Dr. Mendez, who was about to make a joke, abruptly closed his mouth. Sophia began to read, her voice clear and without hesitation. According to the will of Mr. Arthur Vasconcelos, dated May 15, 1990, I, Sophia Vasconcelos, am the sole legal heir to this building. And according to the deed of sale dated June 10, 1992, Mr. Arthur Vasconcelos acquired this building, which is in turn transferred to me. Therefore, as of today, I, Sophia Vasconcelos, am the rightful owner of this building. The room fell into a stunned silence. No one dared to breathe. Dr. Mendez, who had previously called her strange, now looked at her with dread. Claudia, her cousin, was in shock, her face losing color. The second victory was the murmur of surprise and shame that began to circulate among the residents. They, who had ignored and belittled her, were now standing before the woman who owned everything they considered theirs. The greatest victory, however, came from Sophia's own body. Her repetitive movements, once a sign of her illness to others, had now become a gesture of triumph. She swayed gently, not out of nervousness, but out of contained joy, a sense of power and liberation. She, the sick, cleaning lady, had just turned the tables. Donna Clarice tried to stammer something, but Sophia interrupted her, her voice firm. "Starting tomorrow, Donna Clarice's contract as building manager will be reviewed. And Dr. Mendez, please hand me the keys to your office. I will no longer tolerate any kind of prejudice or harassment in this building. And to those who called me sick and shameful, know that the real disease is ignorance and lack of empathy. This building, now under my administration, will be a place of respect for all." Sophia's small victories were, in fact, an earthquake that shook the foundations of prejudice, proving that the truth, even when silent, has the power to change destiny. The silence that followed Sophia's announcement was not only one of shock, but of deep and painful reflection. For Donna Clarice, the house of cards of her authority was collapsing, revealing the futility of her power. For Dr. Mendez, the facade of expertise in human behavior crumbled, exposing his ignorance and prejudice. For Claudia, the cousin she exploited, greed turned to despair and fear. And for the residents, the mirror of their own indifference and cruelty reflected an ugly and undeniable image. The sick girl they mocked was, in fact, the holder of all power. Sophia, in her new position, did not act out of petty revenge. Her illness, autism, which society had tried to hide and silence, now revealed itself to be a source of strength. Her ability to focus on details, her sharp logic, her tireless persistence, everything that made her strange, was what led her to uncover the truth. She was not a sick person to be cured. She was a brilliant mind, just different. The greatest reflection, however, came from Sophia. She felt the weight of responsibility, but also the lightness of finally being seen and respected. The pain of her grandfather Arthur, who protected and believed in her, was validated. Her anger toward her uncle Marcelo, Claudia, and everyone who exploited her did not manifest itself in destruction, but in a just restructuring. The building would no longer be a stage for prejudice. Under her management, it would be a place where diversity would be valued, where the rules would be clear, and respect would be non-negotiable. Sophia's revenge was not to punish others, but to prove her worth and the worth of all those who, like her, are underestimated. The fate of the autistic cleaning lady was not to be a disgrace, but the voice of truth that no one wanted to tell, and living proof that intelligence and dignity do not depend on how one fits into social standards, but on how one lives one's own essence. Life in the building did not return to the way it was before, and the transformation was not magical, but a daily construction. Sophia, the former cleaning lady and now the owner, did not become a tyrant. She implemented new rules based on ethics and mutual respect. Donna Clarice was fired, Dr. Mendez had his lease revised, and Claudia, his cousin, had to answer legally for her actions. But most importantly, Sophia created an environment where everyone was treated with dignity, regardless of their differences. She hired a new cleaning staff, offering fair wages and a respectful work environment. She created a neurodiversity awareness program for residents, with lectures and informational materials. The lobby, once a stage for humiliation, became a space for coexistence and acceptance. Sophia's movements, once a source of ridicule, were now seen as natural, understood as part of her essence. Sophia's story is not just about a power shift, it is about the power of truth and the undeniable dignity of each individual. It is about how prejudice blinds us and how intelligence can manifest itself in ways that society does not expect. Sophia, the autistic woman who was called sick and exploited, became living proof that true ability does not lie in following patterns, but in being true to one's essence and using one's truth to build a more just and humane world. Her destiny, which seemed sealed by exclusion, was rewritten by the silent strength of her mind and the legacy of a grandfather who believed in her. Not all intelligence speaks loudly. Sometimes it lies in the precision of a gesture, the calmness of a gaze, the organization of a mind that processes the world in a unique way. And the greatest power is not a title, but the truth one carries, and the dignity with which one lives. Because true love does not silence those who are different. It amplifies every peculiarity, transforming illness into an unshakable force. If the story of Sophia, the cleaning lady who became the owner of her building, touched your heart, if you felt the pain of humiliation and the strength of overcoming adversity, then this message is for you. Don't let this powerful story end here, in your mind. Leave your comment and share your thoughts. What did this story awaken in you? What lesson do you take away for your life? Share this story with someone who needs to hear this truth, this message of hope and courage today. And if you want to continue to be inspired by stories that transform and remind us of the power of acceptance, sign up and join us in building a world where every person, regardless of how their mind works, is seen, valued, celebrated, and above all understood. Your voice, your engagement, your empathy can change the world around us, one heart at a time. Let's build a future together where the only disease to be fought is prejudice.